My name is Elena Rodriguez. I am 29 years old. I'm a senior data scientist at Pinnacle Analytics, one of Chicago's premier business intelligence firms. For the past 4 years, I've been building predictive models and uncovering insights that have saved our clients millions of dollars. I thought my expertise and track record would protect me from office politics. That changed when Victoria Sterling, our CEO's daughter, joined our team 6 months ago. Things had been building to a breaking point for weeks, but nothing prepared me for what happened yesterday. Standing in the executive boardroom in front of our entire leadership team and our biggest client, Victoria presented my revolutionary customer churn prediction algorithm as her own creation. I sat there in stunned silence as she took credit for 8 months of my life's work. But when she finished her presentation and the client asked their first technical question, I knew exactly what would happen next. Before I tell you how this all unfolded, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how a stolen algorithm became the key to my professional vindication. My journey at Pinnacle Analytics began straight out of graduate school with my PhD in applied mathematics and a specialization in machine learning. I was hired as a junior data scientist with big dreams and an insatiable curiosity about how data could solve real business problems. Those first months were a whirlwind of late nights learning proprietary software, struggling with massive data sets, and trying to prove myself in the competitive world of business analytics. Pinnacle wasn't just any consulting firm. We were the company that Fortune 500 executives called when they needed to make sense of complex market patterns, optimize supply chains, or predict customer behavior. Our algorithms influenced billion-dollar decisions, and our insights shaped entire industry strategies. The pressure was immense, but so was the intellectual satisfaction of solving puzzles that had real-world impact. My first major project involved analyzing customer retention patterns for a regional retail chain. While other analysts focused on demographic segmentation, I noticed something different in the data. Customer behavior patterns weren't just seasonal or demographic-based. They followed complex, cyclical patterns that traditional models missed. I spent 3 months developing a new approach that combined time series analysis with behavioral clustering. The results were extraordinary. My model predicted customer churn with 94% accuracy, compared to the industry standard of 76%. More importantly, it identified specific intervention points where targeted marketing could prevent customer loss. The retail client implemented my recommendations and reduced churn by 35% in their first quarter, saving over $2 million annually. Dr. Marcus Webb, our head of analytics and my mentor, was impressed. "Elena, most analysts see trees," he told me after reviewing my work. "You see the forest, the ecosystem, and the weather patterns that affect both. That's rare." His encouragement meant everything to me. Marcus had built Pinnacle's reputation for innovative analytics, and earning his respect felt like validation of my career choice. He began involving me in higher-profile projects and encouraged me to publish papers on novel analytical techniques. Over the next 2 years, I established myself as Pinnacle's go-to expert for complex prediction problems. I developed algorithms that helped a pharmaceutical company optimize their clinical trial participant selection, saving them $8 million in failed studies. I created a supply chain optimization model for a manufacturing client that reduced their inventory costs by 22% while improving delivery times. Each success built my confidence and reputation within the industry. I started speaking at conferences, publishing in academic journals, and building a network of peers who respected my technical abilities. Clients began requesting me specifically for their most challenging analytical problems. My team grew to include 2 junior analysts, both brilliant graduates who brought fresh perspectives and boundless energy. Sarah specialized in natural language processing, while David Kumar had an exceptional talent for data visualization. Together, We formed what Marcus called the innovation engine of Pinnacle Analytics. We worked seamlessly together, celebrating breakthroughs with late-night pizza sessions and supporting each other through the inevitable frustrations of complex problem-solving. When Sarah struggled with imposter syndrome during her first major presentation, David and I spent hours helping her practice until she felt confident. When David's father was hospitalized, Sarah and I quietly redistributed his workload without him needing to ask. This team dynamic was everything I loved about data science, brilliant minds collaborating to solve problems that seemed impossible at first glance. We pushed each other to think differently, challenged assumptions, and celebrated the elegant beauty of a well-designed algorithm. Harrison Sterling had founded Pinnacle Analytics 15 years earlier, building it from a 3-person startup into a $50 million consulting powerhouse. His success story was legendary in Chicago's business community, a former McKinsey consultant who saw the potential of big data before it became a buzzword. Harrison was respected but intimidating, known for his razor-sharp mind and exacting standards. He could spot flaws in analysis that others missed and had an uncanny ability to ask the one question that revealed weaknesses in any proposal. Working directly with him was both terrifying and exhilarating. His daughter Victoria was a different story entirely. At 26, she had an MBA from Wharton and a resume that looked impressive on paper. Internships at Goldman Sachs and McKinsey, a brief stint at a tech startup in Silicon Valley. But those of us who worked closely with her quickly realized that her technical understanding was superficial at best. Victoria had joined Pinnacle 6 months earlier as a senior consultant, a title that typically required 5 years of experience. Her official role was to help bridge the gap between our technical teams and client executives, translating complex analytics into business language. In practice, she seemed more interested in positioning herself for rapid advancement than in learning the intricacies of data science. From our first interaction, I sensed something problematic about Victoria's approach to collaboration. During a team meeting discussing customer segmentation methodologies, she confidently made statements that revealed fundamental misunderstandings about statistical concepts. When I gently corrected her, suggesting that correlation didn't imply causation in the context she was describing, she smiled tightly and said, "Of course, Elena. Thank you for that technical clarification." The dismissive tone and emphasis on technical, as if it were somehow less important than her business perspective, set the stage for future conflicts. The project that would change everything began 8 months ago when Meridian Financial, one of the largest credit card companies in the Midwest, approached Pinnacle with an urgent problem. They were losing customers at an alarming rate, not to competitors, but to complete disengagement with credit products altogether. Their traditional retention models were failing to predict which customers would simply stop using credit cards entirely. "We're not just losing market share," explained Jennifer Walsh, Meridian's chief data officer, during our initial meeting. "We're losing understanding of our customer base. People are changing their financial behaviors in ways our models can't capture." The challenge was fascinating from an analytical perspective. Traditional churn models focused on customers switching to competitors. But Meridian was dealing with something different, customers who were fundamentally changing their relationship with credit products. Some were embracing cash-only lifestyles, others were consolidating to single cards, and still others were moving to alternative financial products that didn't exist when their models were built. Marcus assigned me to lead the project, recognizing that this type of behavioral prediction required the innovative approach I'd become known for. The contract was worth $1.2 million to Pinnacle, but more importantly, solving this problem could establish us as leaders in next-generation customer analytics. I threw myself into the project with complete dedication. The first month involved deep data exploration, not just Meridian's internal customer data, but external economic indicators, demographic trends, and behavioral research from academic sources. I conducted phone interviews with customers who had reduced their credit usage, trying to understand the psychological and practical factors driving their decisions. What emerged was a complex picture of changing financial consciousness. Younger customers were increasingly debt-averse, influenced by economic uncertainty and social media content promoting financial minimalism. Older customers were simplifying their financial lives in preparation for retirement. Middle-aged customers were reacting to economic stress by reducing their credit exposure. Traditional models looked at transaction patterns, payment history, and demographic variables. But these behavior changes were driven by psychological and social factors that required entirely new analytical approaches. I realized we needed to combine traditional financial data with sentiment analysis, social media trends, and macroeconomic indicators to create a comprehensive prediction model. The breakthrough came during my 4th month on the project. While analyzing customer communication data, I discovered that the language customers used when contacting customer service contained predictive signals that no one had previously identified. Customers who would later reduce their credit usage often used specific phrases and expressed particular concerns months before their behavior changed. This insight led me to develop what I called the Integrated Behavioral Prediction Framework, a machine learning model that combined traditional financial metrics with natural language processing, social sentiment analysis, and psychological profiling. The technical complexity was unprecedented in commercial customer analytics. Sarah's expertise in natural language processing became crucial as we refined the sentiment analysis components. David Kumar created stunning visualizations that helped us understand how different behavioral patterns clustered and evolved over time. Together, we spent countless nights fine-tuning algorithms and testing different approaches. The model development required innovative techniques I had to create from scratch. Traditional regression models couldn't handle the multidimensional nature of the behavioral data. Deep learning approaches needed too much training data. I eventually developed a hybrid ensemble method that combined multiple specialized algorithms, each optimized for different aspects of the prediction problem. After 6 months of development, our initial tests showed remarkable results. The model could predict customer disengagement with 96% accuracy up to 6 months in advance, a level of precision that had never been achieved in customer behavior analytics. More importantly, it identified specific intervention strategies that could prevent disengagement in 73% of at-risk customers. The implications were staggering. If implemented correctly, Meridian could retain customers worth over $50 million in annual revenue. The approach could be adapted for other financial institutions, potentially creating a new standard for customer retention in the industry. As word of the algorithm's success spread within Pinnacle, Victoria began showing increasing interest in the project. Initially, her involvement had been minimal, attending occasional status meetings and asking basic questions about our progress. But as the results became more impressive, her engagement intensified. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking that sets Pinnacle apart," she said during one team meeting, speaking as if she had been involved from the beginning. "The business implications are enormous." I appreciated her enthusiasm, but her comments often revealed that she didn't understand the technical foundations of what we were accomplishing. During one particularly frustrating exchange, she suggested we simplify the algorithm to make it more scalable, not realizing that the complexity was essential to its accuracy. "Victoria, the algorithm's power comes from its ability to process multidimensional behavioral data," I explained patiently. "Simplifying it would essentially eliminate its competitive advantage." "Of course," she replied with that familiar tight smile. "I just think we should consider how to position this for broader commercial application." Her focus on commercialization over technical excellence became a recurring theme. While I was obsessed with optimizing the model's performance and ensuring its statistical validity, Victoria seemed more interested in how to package and sell the approach to other clients. This philosophical difference might have been manageable if Victoria had remained in her consultative role. But over the following weeks, I noticed she was inserting herself more directly into the project. She began scheduling meetings with Meridian without including me, claiming she was maintaining executive relationships. She started speaking about the algorithm as our innovative approach, rather than acknowledging the specific technical contributions. Most concerning, she began requesting detailed documentation of my methodologies, claiming it was for knowledge management purposes. When I asked why she needed the algorithm specifications, she explained that Harrison wanted comprehensive documentation of all major projects. "It's just good business practice," she assured me. "We need to make sure all our intellectual property is properly documented and protected." I complied, not yet recognizing the danger in sharing my proprietary techniques with someone whose technical understanding was limited but whose ambition was unlimited. The first clear warning sign came during a routine project review meeting. Marcus had been called away for a client emergency, leaving Victoria to run the session. As I presented our latest results, I noticed she was taking unusually detailed notes, not just on outcomes, but on specific methodologies and technical approaches. "Elena, could you walk through the ensemble method again?" she asked. "I want to make sure I understand how the different algorithms integrate." I explained the technical architecture, pleased that she seemed genuinely interested in understanding the work. Only later did I realize she was essentially asking me to provide a complete tutorial on proprietary techniques I had spent months developing. After the meeting, Sarah pulled me aside. "Did that seem weird to you?" Victoria was taking notes like she was studying for an exam. "Maybe she's just trying to better understand the technical side," I replied, though I was beginning to have my own doubts. The second warning sign came when I discovered Victoria had scheduled a presentation for Harrison about the Meridian success story. When I asked if she needed my input for the presentation, she waved off my offer. "I've got it covered. Harrison just wants a high-level overview of the business impact. Nothing too technical." But through David, who had inadvertently seen her presentation materials, I learned she was including detailed slides about the algorithm architecture, slides that looked remarkably similar to my own documentation, but with my name nowhere to be found. When I confronted her about it, Victoria's response was coolly dismissive. "Elena, you're being overly sensitive. This is a team effort, and Harrison wants to see how all the pieces fit together. Of course, your technical work is a crucial component." The phrase "crucial component" struck me as particularly ominous. It suggested my revolutionary algorithm was just one piece of a larger puzzle, rather than the innovative breakthrough that it actually was. As we approached the final presentation to Meridian's executive team, the dynamics around the project became increasingly tense. The presentation was scheduled for a Friday morning and would determine whether Meridian would implement our algorithm company-wide and potentially engage Pinnacle for additional analytics projects worth millions of dollars. I had been preparing for this presentation for weeks, developing materials that would clearly communicate both the technical innovation and business impact of our approach. The presentation needed to convince Meridian's executives that our algorithm represented a fundamental breakthrough in customer analytics, not just an incremental improvement over existing models. 3 days before the presentation, Victoria approached me with an unexpected announcement. "Elena, Harrison has asked me to take the lead on Friday's presentation. He feels it would be better to have someone with more executive presentation experience handling this level of client." I was stunned. "Victoria, I developed this algorithm. I understand every technical detail and business implication. How can someone else present work they didn't create?" "You'll still be there, of course," she assured me. "Harrison just thinks the client will respond better to a more polished presentation style. You know how these executive meetings can be." The implication was clear. My technical expertise was valuable, but I wasn't considered polished enough for high-stakes client presentations. It was a critique that felt both professionally insulting and personally demoralizing. When I tried to discuss this decision with Marcus, I discovered he was traveling for another client emergency and wouldn't return until after the Meridian presentation. Victoria's timing seemed deliberately calculated to avoid any interference from my mentor and advocate. That evening, I stayed late to review Victoria's presentation materials, hoping to offer suggestions and ensure the technical content was accurate. What I found made my blood run cold. The presentation was titled Meridian Customer Retention, a breakthrough in behavioral analytics, with Victoria Sterling listed as the primary presenter and project lead. My name appeared in small text on a single slide labeled Project Team, lumped together with Sarah and David as supporting contributors. More alarming, the technical content was oversimplified to the point of inaccuracy. Complex algorithmic approaches were described in generic business terms that missed the innovative elements entirely. The competitive advantages of our approach were attributed to Pinnacle's proprietary methodology without any acknowledgement of the novel techniques I had developed. Most devastating of all, the slides describing future commercial applications positioned Victoria as the architect of the approach, with phrases like Victoria's innovative framework and Sterling's integrated methodology. The next morning, I requested an urgent meeting with Victoria to discuss the presentation content. We met in a small conference room, and I brought printed copies of both her slides and my original documentation to demonstrate the discrepancies. Victoria, there are serious technical inaccuracies in this presentation. I began, trying to keep my voice steady. The algorithm description doesn't capture the innovative elements that make our approach superior to existing methods. She glanced at the materials dismissively. Elena, you're getting too caught up in technical details. Executive presentations need to focus on business value, not algorithm specifications. But the business value comes directly from the technical innovation, I insisted. If you can't explain why our approach is different, you can't justify why it's valuable. Victoria's expression hardened. Look, Elena, I appreciate your technical contributions, but Harrison has made his decision about how to handle this presentation. Your role is to provide support if technical questions arise that I can't answer. The phrase that I can't answer revealed everything. She was planning to present work she didn't understand, relying on me to rescue her if questioned about details. But she would receive all the credit for success while I remained invisible in the background. This isn't right, Victoria, I said, my frustration finally breaking through my professional composure. I spent 8 months developing this algorithm. I created techniques that have never been used in commercial analytics. This isn't just technical support. This is my life's work. Her response was chillingly calm. Elena, you need to understand how this industry works. Technical expertise is important, but business relationships and presentation skills determine who gets credit for success. That's just reality. So you're admitting you're taking credit for work you didn't do. Victoria stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. I'm positioning this project for maximum success with the client. If that bothers you, perhaps you should focus more on developing your own presentation skills and business acumen. As she left the conference room, I sat alone with the devastating realization that my revolutionary algorithm was about to be presented as Victoria's creation, and there was apparently nothing I could do to stop it. Friday morning arrived with unseasonable October rain, Chicago's skyline disappearing into gray clouds that matched my mood perfectly. I arrived at the office early, hoping for one final opportunity to speak with Harrison or Marcus before the presentation. But Harrison was already in back-to-back meetings, and Marcus remained unreachable at his client site. The Meridian executives arrived at 9:30, led by Jennifer Walsh and including their CEO, Robert, along with their entire C-suite team. This wasn't just a project review. It was a high-stakes presentation that could define Pinnacle's relationship with one of our most important clients. I watched Victoria greet the executives with polished confidence, making small talk about business conditions and mutual connections. Her presentation skills were undeniably impressive. She commanded the room with the kind of executive presence that came naturally to someone raised in boardrooms and country club conversations. As we settled into Pinnacle's main conference room, I took a seat along the wall with other team members while Victoria positioned herself at the head of the table next to Harrison. The seating arrangement itself communicated hierarchy and ownership. She was the presenter, I was support staff. "Thank you all for being here today," Victoria began smoothly. "I'm excited to present the breakthrough analytics approach we've developed for Meridian's customer retention challenges." For the next 45 minutes, I watched in growing dismay as Victoria presented my life's work as her own creation. She spoke confidently about innovative methodologies and proprietary approaches, without ever acknowledging that she hadn't developed any of the techniques she was describing. The technical content was oversimplified but generally accurate. Clearly, she had memorized my documentation carefully. She positioned the algorithm as a natural evolution of existing analytics rather than the revolutionary breakthrough it actually was, but her business-focused framing seemed to resonate with the Meridian executives. "The Integrated Behavioral Prediction Framework represents a new standard in customer analytics," she explained, using terminology I had coined. "By combining traditional financial metrics with advanced sentiment analysis and psychological profiling, we've achieved prediction accuracy levels that were previously thought impossible." Jennifer Walsh leaned forward with interest. "The results you're showing are remarkable. This could transform how we approach customer retention across our entire portfolio." "Exactly," Victoria replied with a confident smile. "That's why we believe this methodology has applications far beyond credit cards. The framework could be adapted for any industry dealing with complex customer behavior patterns." As the presentation concluded, Robert asked the question I had been dreading. "This is impressive work, Victoria. Can you walk us through the technical architecture? We'd like to understand how you developed this approach." Victoria's confident demeanor flickered for just a moment, a hesitation so brief that anyone not looking for it might have missed it. "Of course, the technical foundation combines several innovative elements." She began explaining the algorithm architecture, using the correct terminology, but clearly reciting memorized content rather than demonstrating genuine understanding. When Robert asked a follow-up question about why we had chosen ensemble methods over deep learning approaches, Victoria's answer revealed the limits of her technical knowledge. "We found that ensemble methods provided better scalability for this type of implementation," she replied, a generic response that completely missed the statistical reasoning behind the architectural choice. Jennifer Walsh, who had a strong technical background, picked up on the superficial nature of Victoria's answer. "Could you elaborate on the specific advantages of your ensemble approach? We're considering similar architectures for other projects." This was exactly the moment I had anticipated. Victoria glanced briefly in my direction, a silent request for rescue, before attempting another generic response about optimized performance characteristics. Robert's expression grew increasingly skeptical as Victoria's technical explanations became more vague and business-focused. Finally, he asked the question that would change everything. "Victoria, this is clearly sophisticated work. Could we speak directly with the technical lead who developed these algorithms? We'd like to understand the methodology in more detail." Victoria's carefully controlled presentation began to unravel. "Of course, Elena Rodriguez, our senior data scientist, can provide additional technical details." All eyes turned to me as I stood up from my position along the wall. The contrast was stark. Victoria had been positioned as the project leader and intellectual architect, while I had been relegated to technical support. But now the client was asking for the real expert. Elena led the technical development of the algorithm, Victoria added, trying to maintain some control over the narrative. She can answer any specific questions about implementation details. Jennifer Walsh looked confused by the introduction. I thought you developed this approach, Victoria. Are you saying Elena was the technical lead? The question created a moment of awkward silence. Victoria's face flushed slightly as she realized her positioning had created an impossible situation. If she claimed credit for technical development, she would need to answer detailed questions she couldn't handle. If she acknowledged me as the developer, she would undermine her entire presentation. We collaborated closely on all aspects of the project, Victoria replied carefully. Elena handled the technical implementation while I focused on strategy and methodology. But Robert wasn't satisfied with the vague response. He turned to address me directly. Elena, could you walk us through how you developed this algorithm? We're particularly interested in your decision-making process and the innovations that enabled such high accuracy rates. This was my moment. 8 months of work, countless late nights, revolutionary techniques that could transform an entire industry, all of it had been presented as Victoria's creation. Now the client was asking me to explain work that everyone in the room had just been told belonged to someone else. I looked briefly at Harrison, whose expression was unreadable, then at Victoria, whose eyes pleaded with me not to contradict her narrative. Finally, I looked at the Meridian executives, who deserved to understand exactly what they were considering implementing. I'd be happy to explain the technical approach, I began, stepping forward to the presentation screen. The breakthrough came when I realized that traditional churn models were fundamentally limited by their focus on transactional data. As I began explaining the algorithm's development, something interesting happened. My voice grew stronger and more confident as I described work I was genuinely passionate about. Unlike Victoria's memorized presentation, I was speaking from deep technical knowledge and months of problem-solving experience. The key innovation was recognizing that customer disengagement follows predictable linguistic and behavioral patterns that appear in communication data months before traditional metrics show any changes, I continued. I developed a hybrid ensemble method that combines natural language processing with temporal pattern recognition and psychological profiling. Jennifer Walsh interrupted with an excited question. That's fascinating. How did you identify the linguistic indicators? That's not something I've seen in commercial customer analytics. I conducted qualitative interviews with customers who had reduced their credit usage and noticed recurring themes in their language patterns, I explained. Then I used natural language processing to identify these patterns in historical customer service communications and social media data. The questions came rapidly after that, each one revealing the depth of technical innovation behind the algorithm. Robert asked about model validation techniques. Jennifer wanted to understand the psychological profiling methodology. Their head of technology inquired about implementation requirements and scalability considerations. For 30 minutes, I answered detailed technical questions with the kind of expertise that can only come from having personally developed every aspect of the approach. My responses were specific, detailed, and demonstrated complete mastery of both the theoretical foundations and practical implementation challenges. Throughout this technical discussion, Victoria remained silent, her earlier confidence completely deflated. It was becoming painfully obvious to everyone in the room that she had presented work she didn't understand as her own creation. Finally, Robert asked the question that made Victoria's deception impossible to maintain. Elena, this is remarkable work. How long did it take you to develop this algorithm from initial concept to the results we're seeing today? 8 months of full-time development, I replied honestly. The first 4 months were spent on data exploration and identifying the behavioral patterns. The last 4 months focused on algorithm development and validation. And Victoria's role in technical development? Jennifer asked, looking directly at Victoria. The room fell silent as everyone waited for Victoria's response. She could no longer maintain the fiction that she had developed the algorithm, but acknowledging the truth would expose her deception in front of our most important client. Victoria provided valuable business perspective and client management throughout the project. I answered diplomatically, trying to offer her a graceful way out of the situation she had created. But Robert wasn't finished. So to be clear, Elena, you developed this algorithm independently? The technical innovations, the methodology, the implementation, that was your work. Yes, I replied simply. I developed the integrated behavioral prediction framework specifically for Meridian's customer retention challenges. The remainder of the meeting was deeply uncomfortable. Victoria attempted to reframe her role as project manager and strategic advisor, but the damage was done. The Meridian executives had been told they were meeting with the architect of a breakthrough algorithm, only to discover that the actual developer had been positioned as technical support. Harrison's expression grew increasingly stern as the implications became clear. Not only had Victoria misrepresented her contributions, but she had potentially damaged Pinnacle's credibility with a major client by presenting work she couldn't defend or explain. After the Meridian team left, enthusiastic about the algorithm but clearly confused about internal roles and responsibilities, Harrison requested an immediate meeting with Victoria and me. "I want an explanation," he said curtly once his office door was closed. "What exactly happened in that presentation?" Victoria attempted to explain her perspective. "Harrison, I was trying to position the project for maximum impact with the client. Executive presentations require business focus, not technical details. But you presented Elena's work as your own creation," Harrison replied sharply. "The client explicitly asked about your role in developing the algorithm, and you claimed credit for work you didn't do." "That's not how I intended it," Victoria protested. "I was presenting on behalf of the team." "Victoria, you introduced yourself as the developer of the algorithm," I interjected, finally finding my voice. "Your slides referred to Sterling's integrated methodology and Victoria's innovative framework. That's not team representation. That's taking credit for specific technical work." Harrison looked at the printed slides I provided, his expression growing darker as he reviewed the content. "Victoria, this is completely unacceptable. You've misrepresented your contributions to a major client and undermined Elena's professional reputation in the process." "I was trying to help the company," Victoria insisted. "Clients respond better to senior-level presentations." "Clients respond to expertise and honesty," Harrison shot back. "What happens when they ask technical questions you can't answer? What happens when they want to discuss implementation details with a supposed developer who doesn't understand the work?" The meeting concluded with Harrison demanding a complete project review and client follow-up to clarify roles and contributions. Victoria was removed from the Meridian account immediately, and I was asked to prepare a detailed report on the algorithm development for both internal documentation and client transparency. 2 days later, Jennifer Walsh called me directly, not through Pinnacle's main number, but on my personal cell phone. Her message was both surprising and vindicating. "Elena, I wanted to follow up on Friday's presentation. After discussing it with our team, we have some concerns about how the project was represented to us." She explained that Meridian's executive team had been confused by the disconnect between Victoria's claims of technical leadership and her obvious lack of detailed understanding. More importantly, they were concerned about Pinnacle's internal communication and project management if key contributors weren't properly recognized. "We're wondering if we should be working directly with you on implementation rather than going through intermediaries who don't understand the technical foundation," Jennifer continued. "This algorithm is too important to our business to risk any misunderstandings about its development or functionality." Her words were both professionally validating and personally satisfying. After months of having my contributions minimized and ultimately stolen, the client was explicitly requesting to work with me directly because they recognized my expertise and questioned Victoria's credibility. "I appreciate your confidence," I replied. "I'm committed to ensuring successful implementation regardless of internal reporting structures." "Actually, Elena, that raises an interesting question," Jennifer said. "Have you ever considered consulting independently? This algorithm is groundbreaking work, and we'd be interested in discussing exclusive development arrangements with the actual innovator." The suggestion caught me completely off guard. In my focus on reclaiming credit within Pinnacle, I hadn't considered that external opportunities might emerge from this situation. But Jennifer's offer represented something potentially more valuable than internal vindication: direct recognition of my expertise, and the possibility of building my own consulting practice around proprietary innovations. When Marcus finally returned from his client emergency the following Monday, his reaction to the situation was swift and decisive. As my mentor and the head of Pinnacle's analytics division, he had both professional and personal investment in protecting innovative technical work and ensuring proper attribution. "This is exactly the kind of situation that destroys company culture," he told me during our private meeting. "Technical experts need to know that their innovations will be recognized and protected. If we allow business development people to claim credit for work they don't understand, we'll lose every talented data scientist in the company." Marcus scheduled immediate meetings with Harrison to discuss both the specific Victoria situation and broader policies around project attribution and client presentation protocols. He also began working on a formal recognition system that would ensure technical contributors received appropriate credit for proprietary innovations. "Elena, your algorithm is revolutionary work that puts Pinnacle at the forefront of customer analytics," Marcus explained. "We need to position you as the thought leader you've become, not hide your expertise behind business development representatives." His support meant everything to me professionally, but it also highlighted how Victoria's actions had threatened not just my individual recognition, but the entire culture of innovation that made Pinnacle successful. Within a week, Marcus had arranged for me to present the algorithm at the International Conference on Business Analytics, with full attribution as the developer and Pinnacle support for positioning me as a subject matter expert. He also initiated discussions with academic journals about publishing papers on my novel ensemble methodology. The conference presentation was a turning point in my career. Speaking to an audience of 300 data scientists, business analysts, and industry executives, I presented my algorithm not as a Pinnacle project, but as my individual innovation with company support. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Dr. Sarah Mitchell from Stanford, a pioneer in behavioral analytics, approached me after the presentation. "Elena, this is the most innovative work I've seen in commercial customer analytics in years. Have you considered academic collaboration? This methodology has research implications far beyond commercial applications." Other attendees asked about consulting availability, partnership opportunities, and speaking engagements. By the end of the conference, I had received 12 business cards and 6 formal collaboration proposals. The algorithm that Victoria had tried to claim was generating opportunities one never could have imagined. More importantly, the industry recognition validated my technical expertise in ways that internal company dynamics never could. When respected academics and industry leaders acknowledge your work is groundbreaking, it becomes much harder for anyone to minimize or appropriate your contributions. 3 weeks after the disastrous client presentation, Harrison called me into his office for what he described as a strategic career discussion. Victoria was notably absent from this meeting, and I later learned she had been transferred to a business development role with no direct client contact or project management responsibilities. "Elena, I owe you an apology," Harrison began. "What happened with the Meridian presentation was completely unacceptable, and it reflected poorly on Pinnacle's values and management oversight." He explained that the company was implementing new policies around technical attribution, project leadership recognition, and client presentation protocols. More importantly, for my immediate situation, he was offering me a promotion to principal data scientist with responsibility for leading Pinnacle's advanced analytics initiatives. The role comes with a 40% salary increase, equity participation, and your own research and development budget, Harrison continued. We want to position you as Pinnacle's Chief Innovation Officer for Analytics with the authority and resources to develop the next generation of business intelligence solutions. The offer was more generous than anything I had imagined, representing not just financial advancement, but genuine recognition of my technical contributions and leadership potential. It also included explicit protection for intellectual property rights and guaranteed attribution for any innovations developed under company resources. Additionally, Harrison added, we'd like to discuss establishing an Elena Rodriguez Fellowship for Emerging Data Scientists. Your algorithm has generated significant industry interest, and we want to invest in developing the next generation of technical talent under your mentorship. The successful implementation of my algorithm at Meridian exceeded even our most optimistic projections. Within 6 months, they had reduced customer churn by 42% and increased retention-based revenue by $73 million annually. More importantly, the predictive insights enabled them to develop new product offerings specifically designed for customers at risk of disengagement. Jennifer Walsh became one of my strongest professional advocates, recommending my consulting services to other financial institutions and speaking at industry events about the transformative impact of advanced behavioral analytics. The Meridian case study became a cornerstone of Pinnacle's marketing efforts and my own professional reputation. But perhaps most satisfying was the follow-up conversation I had with Jennifer about the original presentation incident. Elena, I have to tell you that Friday's presentation was one of the most enlightening client meetings I've ever attended, she said during one of our implementation reviews. Not because of the algorithm demonstration, but because it revealed so much about professional integrity and expertise. She explained that witnessing Victoria's attempt to claim credit for work she couldn't explain had actually strengthened Meridian's confidence in my capabilities and Pinnacle's technical depth. We knew we were working with the real innovator when you answer those technical questions with such depth and precision, Jennifer continued. Victoria's presentation actually backfired completely. It made your expertise shine even brighter by contrast. This was the moment I realized that sometimes the best vindication comes not from fighting for recognition, but from simply demonstrating undeniable competence when it matters most. The ripple effects continued for months. Other Meridian executives began recommending me personally for their network's analytics challenges. 3 Fortune 500 companies reached out directly after hearing about the algorithm's success. Within a year, I had speaking engagements at 6 major industry conferences. But the most satisfying vindication came 6 months later with a phone call that changed everything. Elena, this is Dr. Rebecca, Chief Technology Officer at NextGen Financial. Jennifer Walsh gave me your contact information. We're launching a revolutionary fintech platform, and we need someone who truly understands behavioral prediction at scale. Dr. Rebecca explained that they weren't just looking for a consultant. They wanted to offer me the position of Chief Data Science Officer for their startup, with equity that could be worth millions if their platform succeeded. We've reviewed your published work on behavioral analytics, and frankly, it's exactly what the future of financial technology needs. We're not interested in working through intermediaries or account managers. We want the person who actually creates the innovations. The irony was perfect. Victoria's attempt to steal credit for my work had inadvertently showcased my expertise to exactly the right people. Her deception had backfired so spectacularly that it launched opportunities one never could have imagined. Looking back, I realized this experience taught me something crucial about professional success. Technical excellence alone isn't enough. you have to be willing to stand up for your contributions and communicate your value clearly. For months, I had focused on doing great work and assuming recognition would follow naturally. But in corporate environments, visibility and advocacy are just as important as competence. Victoria understood this instinctively, even if she applied that knowledge unethically. The difference is that sustainable success requires both the genuine expertise to back up your claims and the communication skills to ensure your contributions are recognized. When someone tries to take credit for work they can't actually defend, the truth has a way of emerging under pressure. First lesson: document everything. My detailed project documentation and progress reports became crucial evidence when Victoria's claims were challenged. Without those records, it would have been much harder to prove my contributions. Second lesson: build relationships beyond your immediate team. The fact that Jennifer Walsh called me directly and that industry experts knew my work through conferences and publications created multiple channels for recognition that Victoria couldn't control. Third lesson: sometimes the best response to theft is excellence. Instead of getting into internal political battles, I focused on demonstrating undeniable expertise when it counted most. The client meeting became a showcase of genuine knowledge versus superficial claims. Fourth lesson: mentorship and advocacy matter. Marcus's support and Harrison's eventual recognition were crucial for transforming a difficult situation into career advancement. Having advocates who understand your work's value makes all the difference. Today, I'm the Chief Data Science Officer at NextGen Financial, leading a team of 12 brilliant analysts working on the next generation of behavioral prediction technology. The algorithm that Victoria tried to steal has been refined and expanded into a platform that serves multiple industries. Victoria, meanwhile, was quietly transferred to a business development role with significantly reduced responsibilities. I heard through the grapevine that she left Pinnacle 6 months later for a position at a smaller firm. Her LinkedIn profile still lists impressive titles and responsibilities, but I notice she's careful not to make specific technical claims anymore. Harrison implemented comprehensive changes at Pinnacle to prevent similar situations. Technical contributors now have explicit attribution rights, client presentations require approval from actual project developers, and the company has policies protecting intellectual property created by employees. Most importantly, Pinnacle established the Innovation Fellowship program we discussed, which has already supported 3 emerging data scientists in developing breakthrough methodologies. Sometimes positive change emerges from negative experiences. The most important thing I learned from this experience is that authenticity always wins in the long run. Victoria's polished presentation skills and executive presence gave her temporary advantage, but when clients needed real expertise, superficial knowledge couldn't compete with genuine innovation. In our industry, you can fake understanding for a while, but eventually someone will ask the question you can't answer. When that moment comes, there's no substitute for having actually done the work. If you're dealing with someone trying to take credit for your work, remember this. Focus on excellence, document everything, build genuine relationships, and trust that competence will ultimately be recognized. The people who matter, clients, industry leaders, future employers, can usually distinguish between real expertise and impressive presentations. And if you're tempted to take credit for work you didn't do, remember Victoria's story. The short-term gains aren't worth the long-term damage to your reputation and relationships. Thanks for watching this story of workplace vindication. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself in professional situations. Drop a comment letting me know about your own experiences with workplace credit theft. I read every single one. Next week, I'll be sharing the story of how a junior developer's simple code suggestion saved a Fortune 500 company from a $50 million cybersecurity breach, and why the senior team initially dismissed the warning. You won't want to miss it. Until then, keep innovating, Keep documenting your work and never let anyone diminish your contributions. Your expertise is your most valuable professional asset. Protect it and advocate for it.